Got it, thank you. I'll call the meeting to order, and if the students want to, we can all stand, and the students can lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay.
You guys ready?
Are you ready?
Ready? Begin.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Cash, I'm sorry that I didn't give you that opportunity, but those smiling faces look like they would like to do something.
Muy buenas noches y bienvenidos. Tenemos los aparatos disponibles para las personas que deseen escuchar interpretación en español, así que pueden conseguirlo de aquí o allá atrás. Okay, gracias.
Thank you. We have headsets for the hard of hearing. Please indicate if you need a headset. Dr. Cash, introductions, proclamations, presentations, and recognitions.
Lily McIntyre from Santa Barbara High School is going to be our student reporter this evening. So if Ms. McIntyre could come forward to the podium.
Hi, my name is Lily McIntyre, and I'm the junior class president in Santa Barbara High School. So current events at Santa Barbara High School are, we're having our first talent show for the first time in 4 years. It's going to be March 19th, and we're having auditions this week in order to make the show. We hosted our first dodgeball tournament. We had 160 kids try it. Our winners were Team USA, and they got to compete against our admin team. We also had special guest Dr. Ben Draddy there. That was fun. They won a trophy and some gift cards. For the second time this year, Santa Barbara High School is going to host a blood drive. Students and faculty are going to be able to participate. And in early April, our ASB executive elections are going to be happening. I'm going to be running for ASB president. La Cuesta, students are learning about tolerance and preparing for a trip to the Museum of Tolerance on March 25th. Seniors are fundraising for grad night. They're selling butter braid pastries. You can stop by and order one, and they're going to be delivered March 26th. And they're also going to be fundraising at Chili's on April 4th. So if you go and say your cause, they'll donate 15% of the bill to their grad night. Alta Vista, they're finishing their youth and the law projects, and they're going to be starting their energy projects this week, and they will be administering the Smarter Balanced Assessment next week. San Marcos High School, they won the County Mock Trial Championship. Congratulations, I know they're here. They're going to be traveling to Riverside for the California State Mock Trial Championships on March 20th through the 22nd. As a part of the District Wellness Day on March 20th, San Marcos will have a Wellness Day fair in the quad. There's going to be Wellness Day fair, there's going to be fitness stations, and other exhibits tables are going to be set up. This Saturday, March 14th, the second session of the Cassie boot camp is going to take place, so the sophomores can prepare for the English assessment. And Dos Pueblos didn't submit anything, so yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lily. We're going to have to end that happy report with some unfortunate news. Sadly, we lost a student over the weekend. To acknowledge the passing of Harding Elementary School 4th grade student Isaias Benuelas, please all join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. And let's all send our thoughts and prayers to the Benuelas family. Harding leadership, and we have them here today, is doing an excellent job meeting the needs of students, staff, and parents as they continue to handle this very sad and difficult situation. And we're going to tonight welcome some Harding 5th graders. Vivian Avila, Itzel Segundo, Leslie Martinez, Elena Abrego, Aricela Flores, and Daniela Elias. And after learning about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, and this has got to be one of those wonderful PYP-IB units, referred to in the National Geographic as a, quote, soupy collection of marine debris, mostly plastic, end quote. These young ladies have stepped forward to do all they can at their school to call attention to the importance of picking up trash so that it doesn't end up in the ocean. Ms. Binkley is here to introduce the students along with Mr. Handel. So I'd like Ms. Binkley to come forward to the podium.
You can go ahead, yes.
Thank you, Dr. Cash. Thank you, Board, for giving us this opportunity to share the wonderful action that these students have taken on. I want to thank the parents for coming, and also Ms. Mason and Ms. Lane, who are the 5th grade teacher and 5th grade student teacher from UCSB, that have really supported the students in their endeavor. So according to the IB mission statement, students have a responsibility not only to improve themselves, but also to improve their communities and their world. Leslie, Daniela, Elena, Itzel, Vivian, and Araceli are here to share an action that has impacted our school community and one that they hope to see reach out locally and globally. So can we give the awards?
Absolutely. So I'll call out the names of the students so that they can come up and receive an award for recognition from the board. First name is Vivian Avila. Next student is Itzel Segundo. Go ahead and sign that.
Stand up front.
Leslie Martinez. Elena Abrego. Araceli Flores. Daniela Elias.
Okay. All right, ladies, if you could put your awards on your chair and then come line up in the order that we had rehearsed.
Good evening. We are 5th grade students in Miss Mason's class at Harding University Partnership School. We are here to talk to you about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. The reason we are here is because the Great Pacific Garbage Patch is a very emotional topic to us, as well as our IB unit sharing the planet. Our teacher introduced us to this devastating issue, and we knew we needed to take action.
The Great Pacific Garbage Patch is an enormous collection of trash that is mostly plastic, that is floating in a huge circular current called a gyre, that is the state of Texas. Some estimate it might even be as big as the United States. Some scientists call the Great Pacific Garbage Patch a human-made ecosystem.
Here are some causes of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. First, we humans are the main cause. When we litter, our debris can wash into storm drains, which go to the ocean. Also, when we litter at the beach, the wind pulls the litter into the ocean. Another little known cause is that storms in the ocean can make ships lose their cargo.
Next, we want to tell you some harmful effects of plastic in the ocean. Probably the worst one is that animals get stuck in plastic and can eat it or die from it. Additionally, plastic releases chemicals as it breaks down, and those chemicals enter a food web. If you eat fish, you may be eating chemicals made of plastic.
There are some solutions though. First, we need to recycle more. Our research told us that only 5% of the population recycles. That means another solution is to spread the word. Tell more people about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch and take action just like us. In addition, we we applied for grant money from Disney Channel, and if we receive that grant money, we will host a watershed cleanup to keep our oceans clean and the watershed clean too.
We are asking you, the board members, to take a pledge. Here's the pledge. I pledge to pick up 1 piece of trash every day to keep Santa Barbara clean and sea creatures safe.
That's a great pledge.
Should the board take that pledge?
Let's see what this young lady's going to ask us.
Yes.
So once we were done with our research, we wrote essays. And then of the common, formative assessment. And that's the test.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And to spread the word, can you put back up on the screen, Mr. Rickman? You can go home and tell your parents, or you can tell all your friends in school or in your neighborhood to turn the TV on Saturday night at 5 o'clock, and you can see your presentation on TV. Or in Spanish, Monday morning at 8 a.m. they can see your presentation. Tape it on your DV, on your system, or you can go to our website, district website, on the agenda in another week or so, and you can see it on there also. So spread the word. And you have more.
We'd like to dedicate this presentation to a fellow Harding Hawk who died this past weekend. He was a caring and creative student that will be missed greatly.
Thank you for allowing us to present tonight.
Thank you.
We hope you will support our project and take action of your own.
And we are going to leave our project here for any questions, comments, or compliments or concerns. So you can write down on the poster paper.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, here's our signed pledge.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go. You guys should hang them in your school.
Thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you so much, Harding Hawks. Great job, Harding staff. It's always inspiring to be there. So, picture time.
It's a selfie.
Good job.
Yeah. Good job. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Nice job.
Great job.
And you guys can leave. You don't have to stay for the rest of the meeting. You can get home and do your homework.
Absolutely. Well, that's the beginning of our system, elementary schools, great work. Let's talk about how our kids do when they get to high school. We're very proud tonight to recognize San Marcos High School's mock trial team as the Santa Barbara County champions. San Marcos has always done an excellent job, has been a county champion numerous years. And they have a great teacher, coach, leader, Eric Burrows, and I'd ask Eric to come forward, congratulate him, and have him. I'll remind the board that the 4 county finalist teams all came from the Santa Barbara Unified School District. So, Mr. Burrows, would you tell us about the competition and introduce your team?
Thank you very much, and it's an honor to be here, and thank you very much for recognizing these amazing students. A mock trial is an amazing opportunity for young people to compete in an intellectual and academic environment in the courtroom in front of a Superior Court Judge, Brian Hill, and Judge Kelly from North County, where the presiding judges scored by local attorneys with a simulated criminal trial. And it provides the opportunity for students to be in charge. There are no coaches involved. This is a competition where they do everything themselves. And it provides an incredible opportunity for them to work with local attorneys on a daily basis, learning the criminal criminal justice system and learning how to act as an attorney in the courtroom as well as a witness in this simulated criminal trial. And as Dr. Cash said, the Final Four, as it has been for the past few years, was all Santa Barbara School District schools, 2 teams from Dos Pueblos. The JV team was every bit as good as any team in the competition, and then Santa Barbara High and San Marcos High, and we were very fortunate to win this year. This group of young people is an incredibly dedicated group that I believe will go on to the state championship and pull that back to Santa Barbara County. In 2004, 2006, San Marcos won the state championship. We're going to do it again this year with these kids who work harder, come together as a team from all different parts of the San Marcos community. And it truly is a team effort with incredible ability on the part of these kids. So I'd like to, if possible, bring them up to introduce them. Kate Burt is a lead defense attorney for the team. Megan Wilson is a lead prosecution attorney for the team. Sophia Bordovsky is the expert witness of all expert witnesses. Gabby Goldberg not only was an attorney on the team, but also the pre-trial attorney on the team. Miles Centrella is a lead attorney on the defense team. Natalie Hurt is the eccentric millionaire with the art painting that was stolen from her. Natalie Hurt. Sophie Clementi did every single role we could possibly ask of her, always the perfect substitute for us in all different roles. Natalie Clementi. Daisy Scott was part of the pretrial team and an amazing, perfect person to help everybody. That's the most difficult part of mock trial, Daisy Scott. Alex, I call her Jackie Ferris, was the other prosecution expert standing and convincing us that the stolen painting was indeed a stolen painting. Alex Ferris. And Emma Blaschke was again the eccentric millionaire with the painting stolen from her house. Emma Blaschke. And of course, Ed Behrens is here, and no one supports San Marcos endeavors better than Ed Behrens, our principal at San Marcos. So I'd like to say thank you, Ed, for everything you do to support them. And I'd like to say, and this is half the team. We have lacrosse games going on at Dos Pueblos. We have science fair projects getting done. We have acting classes and Santa Barbara City College classes. So this is just half the team who was available tonight. But these kids are brilliant. They're hardworking, they're dedicated, and they're the most professional group of people when they walk in a courtroom than you can possibly believe. So thank you, kids, for what you do, and thank you, board, for recognizing them.
Well, thank you, Mr. Burrows, and thank you, San Marcos, and congratulations. Just go win now, okay? Be the state champs. We'll invite you back. Thank you. Great job, and congratulations again to San Marcos High School. Last week, Assistant Superintendent Mitch Serena held an education site security assessment course with representatives from our schools and the Joint Regional Intelligence Center, or JRIC, part of Homeland Security. On day one of the two-day course, the focus was on mobile, web-based assessment tools, plus practice exercises. On day two, campus assessments, our campuses, were conducted to provide administrators with information on security vulnerables within their schools and discussions on how to address those vulnerabilities, which is fantastic. I really want to commend publicly Mitch Terina. He has really reached out to the resources, not just within our local area, but to our entire state, to find the best possible way to assess our school facilities. The Santa Barbara Education Foundation's Hope Awards is coming on Thursday, April 16th. Our students did an unbelievable job at Friday's County Science Fair. More than 100 of our students received place awards. And today, we began posting those names on our website and in e-news, and we'll obviously have an opportunity when the state competition takes place to bring back our state award recipients. March is Music in Our Schools Month, and with the support of local voters who approved the parcel tax, we have a rich, engaging program for our elementary students. Last night, I had a great opportunity to go watch the partnership that we have with ICANN, with the City of Santa Barbara, and see the West Side String Orchestra play. It was really wonderful. We also have Bravo after-school music for grades 5 and 6. ICANN after-school music, as I stated, is continuing to happen. And again, we're very grateful to our local voters. Want to remind everybody that this is tax season, in that Dawn's Net Cafe is still out there, hard at work preparing tax returns for members of our community, and want to thank them for that. And this concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Dr. Cash. Board comments, correspondence? Ms. Limon?
So I will say that this past Saturday, I had the opportunity to join students from Santa Barbara, San Marcos, La Cuesta, and who am I missing? Dos Pueblos wasn't there, but I know that they will be there at the AHA joint school symposium of sorts, and it was actually, they had us sit there. Supervisor Carvajal was there, and we had separate groups. We actually sat and we went through a kind of a peace circle process. So it was really great to see the students lead it. They directed us, they taught us, they spoke to us, and so it was really a great way to see what AHA is doing in our schools. And I understand that Dos Pueblos is coming on board with with the group, with having a group there on their campus. Additionally, there was a Latino Summit on diabetes that took place last week, and there were different individuals there, but I did want to mention to the district that a lot about healthy messaging and food came up in relation to our schools in good ways, but I wouldn't be surprised if somehow that trickles down to people asking more about what's happening and just important messaging for young students to think about diabetes in our community.
Anyone else? Just two quick things. I went to a session about Finland education, because you hear a lot about that. And I can categorically say it's apples and oranges. If anybody compares us to Finland, it's just totally a different environment, climate. They had 2 or 3 things that they talked about that I thought were appropriate or interesting. Teachers are highly paid and very well respected. So I think that's a good aspiration for us. They don't start school until they're 7 years old. I thought that was interesting. And they don't have homework. And the school day is shorter. So education is totally free, including universities. So it was interesting, but it's apples and oranges, and the whole idea of demographics and homogeneity is totally different. The second thing, I just want to put a shout out to Arts and Lectures. Once again, they brought a group called Story Pirates to 5 of our schools. I happened to go to the one at Cleveland, and it was amazing. There were 5 or 6 comedians who do this across the nation, and Arts and Lectures brought them to Santa Barbara again, and the students just absolutely went wild. They totally got it, got involved. They were into it deeply. One little girl made up her own story, and they did that live for her, and then they also created their own story right on the spot. It was just a very interesting thing to watch, and I hope they come back again. But thank you to Arts and Lectures. They do a lot for us, and that's really nice. Dr. Paz? No. No? Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay, announcement of closed session items. Bear with me. This was a long one. On student discipline, A1, we'll hear the results of that later on the agenda. Item B2, the waiver of the Cassie waivers. A motion was made by Ms. Idelson, seconded by Dr. Paz, to approve the Cassie waivers. The vote was unanimous. On B3, nothing to report. On B4, nothing to report. On B5, there was a motion made by Parker, seconded by Dr. Paz, to uphold the, excuse me, let me get the right wording, that the board has decided to uphold the findings and conclusions in the district's investigations report dated February 3rd, 2015, on the complaint of Ruben Orozco, and will not hear Mr. Orozco's appeal. That was motion made by Parker, seconded by Dr. Paz, and passed unanimously. There was a motion made by Ms. Parker, seconded by Dr. Paz, regarding the approval of the non-reelect of 4 teachers and 1 administrator. That passed unanimously. Was that all of them, other than the last one? Well, yes, I got that coming up, but that's all under that, all under B5. On B6, motion by Ms. Parker, seconded by Dr. Paz, that we name as director Donna Rizzoni as the Visual Arts and Performing Arts and Special Projects. Director of Visual Arts, Performing Arts, and Special Projects. And that motion was passed unanimously. Okay.
Congratulations,
Congrats,
Dr.
Donna.
Ronzoni.
And I think and then on B7, there was not only no action taken, it wasn't really discussed. We will now go to public comment.
We have one public comment slip. It's Mr. Kenneth Locke.
My name is Kenneth Locke. I went before City Council, said I did public comment. I'm kind of famous maybe for flying signs off my bicycle in front of the museum. I had a sign at free mind-body examination, or I could have made it shorter, exam. And it's kind of interesting, as I mentioned before the City Council, is that I'm not sure if there's a person in this community that actually has received a mind-body examination. And the reason for that is because there isn't a teacher in this community that actually teaches a discipline in relation to it being a mind-body exercise. So the idea of a mind-body examination requires it be relative to, again, a mind-body exercise. And as I mentioned before the City Council, there's a little confusion in this community in relation to what one is. And we refer to yoga, maybe Pilates, Tai Chi, and it turns out that I've been through the means of the athletic discipline of tennis. It turns out that I'm the first athlete to actually bring that discipline to where we understand it as a mind-body exercise, and as well as a holistic health and spiritual practice. And now the benefits associated with a mind-body exercise: increased intelligence, increased coordination, increased balance. Let's see. And now the other option is just the other side of the coin is a lack of intelligence. And then lack of coordination. And right now, how tennis is being handled, I'm assuming, is that it's recognized purely as a sport, not an athletic discipline, and competition. And then the children are only developing one arm. And I'm sorry to say that limits their intelligence, limits their, it actually has side effects, symptoms of mental illness, physical illness, I'm sorry to say, degenerative, and it should be recognized. And I'm just kind of just doing kind of my job right now, just to communicate and share this with the community, just the fact that I'm here in this community. Just want to share that with you today. Thank you.
Thank you.
That it? Okay. Go on to item D, acceptance of donations.
I move to accept with gratitude.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. The consent calendar. Anybody want an item removed for later discussion?
Yes.
Dr. Paz?
E15.
E15, Dr. Paz. Anyone else? Is it a quick question or discussion totally?
Maybe a quick question. There was no attachment to E15, so I have no idea what exactly are we paying for. So the two attachments that were in there relate to the bid process and then the acceptance letter, but not a list of the items being purchased. So.
Okay, we'll come back to that. I asked Mr. Rickman the same question, so he has an answer. Okay, we'll come back to that one on the agenda. Any others? Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar with the exception of item 15?
I make the motion to approve the consent agenda as presented except for item E15.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. We'll come back to E15, so prepare your thoughts, Mr. Rickman. No public hearing. We'll go on to the student discipline. Item G1 regarding case number 2014-15-15. Ms. Parker?
I move in case 2014-15-15 that we approve the stipulated agreement for a suspended expulsion for one school year ending in June 2015.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. G2, case 2014-15-17.
I move that in case 2014-15-17, we approve the stipulated agreement for a suspended expulsion for one school year ending in January 2016.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried unanimously. And item G3, 2014-15-18.
In case 2014-15-18, I move that we approve the stipulated agreement for a suspended expulsion for one school year ending in January 2016.
Second.
Under discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, G4, notice to the Board of Education of recommendation not to reemploy certificated employees and approval of Resolution 2015-15-27.
Would ask Dr. Christensen to present this item.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board, Dr. Cash, and my colleagues. The board has been provided a notice of our recommendation not to reemploy certificated employees. The reason for this recommendation is that particular kinds of services will be reduced or discontinued for the 2015 school year in the child development after-school program. The .1875 represents 30 minutes per day. 2 employees are affected, and the employees have been notified. They are aware that this will happen. Consequently, based on a recommendation, the board is required to adopt a resolution, and we are recommending that you adopt the resolution to decrease the number of certificated employees due to a reduction in particular kinds of services for that number is 2014-15/27.
The percentage in the resolution both is different in 2 documents. Does that have any meaning? It's a minor difference, but it is a difference.
It should be 30 minutes a day.
One's
I see.
.18,
I see that.
and the other is .125 or something?
There's obviously a disconnect.
Do we
So
know
I'm
what
going to have to confirm which one is correct for you. I can do that in a matter of moments.
Well, do I have a motion to? It's such
Why
a-
don't we get that and we'll bring it back? So can you get that number?
I'll get it in moments.
Okay. Can we, so that you're voting on the correct number?
Sure.
Are there other questions that the board has that Dr. Christensen could? Okay.
Thank you.
I apologize for not emailing you on that. I just noticed it late today. G5, schools, safety plans. I wonder why all these principals are here.
Well, I
Do
wonder
I have a
why
motion
they're
to approve? No, okay, go ahead.
I wonder why they're all sitting in the back. Except for two. Thank you. That's right.
You guys are kind of in the middle.
What are we
Board, how would you like this, Dr. Cash, how would you like it presented?
Well, one of the good things that happened is that when, for the first, was it 4 or 5 that we presented? We presented it with, as you noted, a different format and template. And we were mostly concerned that there'd be questions about that template and that format. We didn't receive any about that, so now's an opportunity for you to ask the principals about particular issues in their safety plan. We didn't prep the principals to come forward and present them, but Mr. Trina's here, as well as each individual principal.
Anybody have any questions? Aye, Dr. Paz.
Just in general, if anyone wanted to comment on these, the new templates and whether you liked them and didn't like them, what could be improved, if anyone's willing to step up and go to the microphone, that would be great.
All right.
God, there's always one, right?
The sacrifice.
No, I just briefly, I think what the new template does for us is that it's much more relevant and it applies actually to what we're doing at our school sites versus more of a compliance. And that's how we always felt that the other document was more of compliance, but it wasn't really what we currently are doing. So this plan actually reflects what we currently do, which it should reflect.
Thank you.
I just had a question about how much, after the plan's in place, is there, like any drills or run-throughs for it? Because it seems like it's all good to read, but if it's not practiced, it might be really confusing if something were to happen.
The drills continue to run on a monthly basis for elementary, on 2 times a semester for the junior high, and at least 1 time for semesters for each high school.
And is everything, like, say, a lockdown? I mean, everything is...
They should be doing 1 drill of each if they can. Okay. That would be the expectation.
Okay, thank you.
Just a couple general questions, and I'm not going to point out what schools, but I'm just curious. The one section that seemed to me to be the most, give you the most variety, is the assessment of the current status of school crime, which sounds like a strange name to me, but that's okay. I found one where it talks about 2 safety-related goals for the next school year, as well as the strategies and our programs that we use to meet these goals. But those 2 goals and the strategies aren't part of the paragraph. Is that a... And then the same thing, I found others where it says we use these sources, Healthy Kids, Law Enforcement, CalPADS, Regular Review, as a school assessment, but there was no follow-up as to what reviewing those things led to. Is that just the way it is supposed to be, or should there be more information about that section in some of them? Another one, interesting, this is not related to that question, but based upon the threat and risk assessment, the committee has a strong concern about the PE and athletic facilities, in particular the gymnasium and pool deck. Another major concern is the increase in criminal activity after hours, tagging, vandalism. The committee feels that better surveillance may serve as a deterrent in some of these ongoing issues. Now, it's fine to have that reported out in a plan, but what takes place to follow up on those recommendations?
I can address the last one, and I know which school that is, because they want to volunteer to have be the school that has exterior surveillance cameras and a pilot program based upon that assessment. And I believe Mr. Hetjunk and the principal, I won't out the school since you haven't, have met, and they are developing a diagram with a vendor on where those cameras would go. And I think Mr. Rickman's involved because of the technology related to the cameras, and so that's a direct outcome of that.
So when you see it in writing here, then
we're going to do something. So you'll see that coming forward as a pilot at this one school.
So this doesn't just get filed away someplace and we talk about it again next year? Okay.
Correct.
Okay. But those are my comments, is that in some, I just think that one paragraph, some of the schools did a great job in that one paragraph as far as being explanatory. Others did the bare minimum. And again, this year, I'm just going to say, I know Peabody's was totally different, and it always has been totally different, but it sure is nice. It sure is good. Okay, anybody else? Ms. Limon.
So I just have general comments. I actually was reading through them, and I noticed that the mention and use of restorative approaches for discipline actually varied. I guess I expected to see a more prominent role in discussion of discipline, and it was not. In some cases it was there, in other cases it wasn't. So I think that just speaks to our general effort of, that's a direction that we want to move into, and not every school is there yet, or at least where they'd like to be. One area that I also noticed was just the area of students with special needs. And so that really varied among schools, where it was mentioned, where it was not mentioned. And I don't know if it has to or doesn't have to, but when you start comparing and reading them, you just start to notice the differences. So that was another area. I do want to give kudos, and I won't say the school, but I think they'll figure it out, to a couple schools. One actually mentioned the FAIR Act as part of being something that was instrumental in changing the culture of the school. And so I actually thought that it stood out because I didn't see it in others. And there was one school that just did an incredible job with the map. I almost felt like with the map, it was color-coded. I knew what teachers were going where. It's like the teachers were color-coded, the map was color-coded, the playground, everything. And I just was like, I kind of get it, and I don't work at that school. So kudos to that particular school. And then there's I think two typos we might want to fix. One school, page 5 of one school's had the wrong school name on there. And the other one is, I think that we didn't have the correct last name, a different school, but correct last name for one of our police officers who reviews it. So just two things I caught. But
Ms. Parker, have you comment on maps?
I'm about to comment again on maps, and that is that it's really a district issue, not the site issue. These need to come forward, but we should not be publishing these maps on our website. So I want to really request that the maps not be on the website for easy access for
They should only be on hard copy that we keep, and then
so that the public needs to come to see for some specific reason.
Right.
And obviously the state needs it, and the site needs it more than anything, but not something that is just easily accessible. And I think I just have one follow-up question on the form, and that is, you talked, Ms. Alzina, about it being sort of more practical. What was it in terms of, how was it in terms of being time-consuming? Obviously, the committees are going through their processes anyway, but in terms of just filling out the form, was that better or worse? And I don't know if that's Mr. Turina correct. Have you got feedback from?
I know from my point of view that a lot of the updating that I used to do in the old template, where I was looking at the district policies and trying to change those for the updates that happen, that was very time consuming, whereas now that we have them linked, the sites don't have to worry about any policy that have been updated. The link is automatically updated to our website. As far as the goals and components and some of the other emergency procedures, I could not speak to that, but maybe one of the principals could speak to whether or not it was less or more time consuming for them to do that.
Don't everybody rush the podium at once.
Looks like they're happy.
Thank you.
Oh, no, they wait long enough to know that it'll come. No, as far as the time-consuming piece goes, it's stuff that we do normally, and so normally we would have what we actually do as our plan that we're meeting with our committee, and then we have the plan that we plug everything into for compliance. So now it was just creating one plan. So what I foresee in the future, especially next year, is that this plan becomes meatier over time, because really this is now where we can put both documents together to really use that as a driving force. So I see this as the first year of this new template, which is a much better template. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that answers it. Thank you.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve the Santa Barbara Unified School District school safety plans for the schools that are listed.
I'll second it.
Any more discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. And you've almost been out of your house for 12 hours. You want to delay a little bit longer? They were all bright and shiny at 7 o'clock this morning, at 7:30 this morning. So we appreciate your 12-hour days. Okay, now go home and do your homework. Okay.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Item G6, approval of 3-year agreement between Hanover Research and the Santa Barbara Unified School District.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. As the board is aware, we entered into an agreement with Hanover a year ago, or a little over a year ago, in order to provide some evaluation services for the district and also some survey services. Shortly thereafter, the board approved the hiring of our evaluator, Dr. Guillermo Juan. And I mentioned to the board that we would be making a decision about whether one or the other or both were still going to be needed by the district. And at that particular point, my take on it was we probably would not be have one or the other. We wouldn't keep them both. But after a lot of conversation with all of Cabinet and with Dr. Guillermo Juan, who I thought was going to be here this evening.
We're still driving from south.
Okay. Is she here?
She's not here, is upstairs getting some stuff. So.
Oh, whoa. So can we?
Let's go back to item number G4, the recommendation not to re-employ certificate employees.
Okay, great. I didn't see her. I didn't know she was going to make it. So
we went through that pretty quick. The safety plans.
That's what it is.
The resolution is correct. It is .125.
125.
Yes.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the resolutions at .125?
So moved.
Yes. Second.
Okay. Moved by Ms. Parker, seconded by Dr. Paz. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, with the board's permission, could we skip 6 until Dr. Guillermo Juan is available and move to 7?
Okay. Let's go to the positive certification of the second interim financial report for fiscal 2014-15.
Who knew the principals were going to be so excited about safety plans?
I'm just concerned.
They're talking about it right now, Judy.
Right? They're talking about color coding, maps.
We should make them come back in and listen to my report since I have 2 people to report. Thank you. Santa Barbara Unified School District staff prepares the fiscal year 2014-15 second interim for the board's review and approval. This positive certification projects an ending fund balance in the general fund that exceeds the Santa Barbara Unified minimum required reserve requirement of 3% for the current year and 2 subsequent years. As you may remember, in the first interim, we talked a lot about the governor's rainy day fund, and we mentioned in that last interim that it probably would take a long time to get here. Well, with the capital gains so high this year, and we are getting there closer than we anticipated, The maintenance factor is being funded. That's our deferrals and our gap funding. They're expecting by the end of 15-16 only $1.9 billion remains to fund, so that's a lot less than in June we predicted $6.6 billion. We've already reached test 1 for Prop 98. We've already funded COLAs. And the capital gains is expected in 14-15 to exceed what was projected to 11%. What triggers the government or the governor to make a deposit into his rainy day fund is 8%. So within the next couple years, we feel that that will happen if the law does not change. We have not me, but there's 4 bills out there. 2 will just wipe the ed code out, and then there is 2 that will modify it. So we'll have to keep track of those and watch closely. I'm sure that if any of them are modified or even wiped out, I'm sure that will be big headlines, and so we'll know right away.
Are you talking about the entire ed code or just this section?
Just the rainy day
You
section.
can wait for the entire ed code, Mr. Parent.
I wanted to make sure the public understands. We're not talking about eliminating the ed code.
No. That's a good point. So, but we can do some things about this. There are provisions in this coming proposal, governor's budget, that will allow us to hold a higher reserve amount if it's approved by the county, and also put away for facilities use. So, for example, the RR&M, which is our routine restricted maintenance, will be able to roll over the funds to work on any kind of modernization or new construction. They also talk about expending the local funding capacity, which would be our assessed value caps, and the governor's proposing a minimum cap inflation increase for inflation. They're talking about also restructuring the developer fees to bring more money into the district so that they can do modernization and reconstruction. And then they're also proposing target state funding for districts most in need. I doubt that we would qualify for something like that. Our assessed value is too high. So I've given some thought to our 160 portables that we have on our campuses, and if the board decides to fund a portable at $750,000 replacement and takes the $4 million that we have in the savings account, we could fund 6 portables. So 150 years to get rid of 160 portables. So I don't think I'll be around to see that, but
take your vitamins.
So a few other things that we need to consider in the future. In 14-15, the QIA expires. 15-16, our regional occupational program, that was partially funded or completely funded by the county. We're going to absorb $245,000 of that the next year. And then in 16-17, the increase of sales tax goes away. 16-17 is our final year of parcel tax. 17-18, we have to absorb the total ROP. In 19-20, increase to personal income tax over $250 expires. We have, so far the governor has not put on a state facility bond, and also our continual California state teachers retirement system and CalPERS, also those increases. So what's in store for the governor's proposal for January? This is his first attempt at the budget for next year, and I just want to mention a few things. As we mentioned before, the economy is improving. However, California, once again, is relying on the top 1% for the capital gains to support the state budget. So we've seen what happens in the past when the stock market goes down, how the state suffers. So it would be nice to be able to control our fund balance to weather that storm. Child development is planning on a COLA. That's the first one it's had since 2008-9. We have a larger gap funding for 15-16 of 32%, or about $675 for ADA. We also have the opportunity to apply for a 3-year CTE grant, which would help us with our cost of ROP. One-time funding for more Common Core money through a mandated dollar amount or grant. And then that can be used for Common Core, such as English language development or the next generation science. And the big one is the amount of funding for special ed, $2.41, which is a total of $33,000. So I would like to see a couple of zeros added to that, and then we would be talking about some good funding increases for special ed. We'll know more on the May revise, and hopefully something will come out of for special ed, because there are committees out there reviewing the way special ed is funding, and so we're hoping that something comes out of that. So let's look at the differences between first interim and second.
Could we, are there any questions on pages 1, 2, or 3 of the summary? I'd just like to point out on page 2, just to make it clear, it talks about in the paragraph above the future demands, the need to get county approval of, if we have a reserve over 6%, it says, the district cannot exceed a 6% reserve level unless it is approved from the SB CEO. Well, I think we're going to see later on that we are over 6%. But I asked Meg, and you can answer that portion of this paragraph doesn't kick in until $1 is put into the rainy day fund. So we're not under any obligation to go to the county to get any approval at this time.
That's correct. Yeah. The triggers have to be pulled, and he has to make a deposit into the rainy day fund for us to have that 6%.
Thank you.
So there's a pretty significant change, a decrease in the local control funding formula, and that was due to the incorrect ADA or enrollment that was pulled out of our student information system. And if you would go back to adopted budget and look at what we projected then, it's only about $50,000 higher back in adopted budget compared to second interim. So that first interim was what the spike was, but at the adopted budget we had the right number in there. But we overestimated at first interim from the information we got out of the system.
Mr. Heron, may I ask a question on that?
Yes, Ms. Parker.
Was that an Illuminate problem, or was that an operator issue? Who knows? What?
I would say that it was a combination of both.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Local revenue. The main increase was $518,000 of foreign students' tuition, and then a slight increase to their donations. Salaries and benefits are increased due to largely due to the 3% of the retro to July 1 and the 3% given to the teachers. Small decrease in classified salaries due to having a smaller amount of custodials. We had a lot of people out on personal leave, and so we had to cover them through the contracted service area, which is in operating services and operation. Books and supplies, we have a significant decrease. When we found the error in the revenue on the local control, we went looking for money that we could take out of the unrestricted side of the budget and move to the restricted side where there was funds. So we offset some of the cost of that error that we had the first interim. And so the services and operation is increases due to the outside temporary staffing to cover the classified staff that I spoke about earlier. So other finance and services, not a very big change. That increase was only due to transportation costs. And so the results of our operation were 2.3 in deficit spending. And this is mainly due for the error in the top, in the revenue and the 3%. On the restricted side, the result of the updating the revenue, we didn't get, due to the newness of Munis, some of our staff was unable to increase the restricted side of the budget with all the new numbers, and that has been updated now. So that's an accurate number. Salaries and benefits basically is the COLA and that increase in the updating of all the donation accounts. An additional allocation of
Mr.
Title
Rickman, I
I.
think you're a couple pages behind.
We're on restricted revenues.
Right there.
That's where we are right there, right?
Yeah. Okay, so the next page is restricted other finances, and that is the movement of the contribution due to the transportation cost. And therefore, the net result also is deficit spending, but on the restricted side, it's not necessarily, we don't really talk about it as deficit. We're just spending the money on the kids, and that's what should happen. And we're projecting a ending fund balance of $216,000. Excuse me. Next is just our normal reserve chart. As you can see, the purple is the special reserve, which is Fund 17. That's got about $4.5 million of it in $4.5 million in it, and then about $500,000 of it is already allocated to an expenditure that we need to do in the future, and that's the field replacement and a couple of vehicles. Each year, we put in $100,000 to replace that field out in Santa Barbara, or San Marcos, due to the life of it is about 10 years, and so we're just preparing for it. And these are the kinds of things that we will be allowed to do, is to save if we have no other funds to use. So the components of ending fund balance, it projects there that special reserve is about $4.5 million, 462 is that for field repair and sites. The next is, we did a little enrollment projections, and we changed it up a little bit because I wanted to show you what we think the enrollment projection would be for grade spans out to 2021. So pretty much remains within a couple hundred here and there from 2014, 14,200 to 2021, about 14,562. I know you've seen other numbers, but I take the live births of the county and then put 11% on it, and that's about what we are. And as I mentioned earlier, that the enrollment projections are pretty accurate when I trust my own enrollment projections. So then we have the unduplicated pupil count, which we did a big campaign this year, or actually at the end of last year, to try to get everybody to, and educate them that it's not just if you want to eat free, but we have AP free testing, and if you qualify, and that, even if you don't want to eat, fill out the paper and see if you qualify, and to boost up the unduplicated pupil count. As you can see, we did increase it. It still stayed about at 54% roughly, because our ADA slightly increased also, so it offset each other. But, we got up about 100 students.
And just to clarify, you're talking about the unduplicated pupil count for students who qualify for Title I?
No, I'm talking about unduplicated pupil count that's for EL, foster, and free and reduced.
And free and reduced, okay.
This is our supplemental, this is our LCAP funding.
Do we have any internal thoughts that we should get that to be able to get that to 55%?
I would love to get that to 50.
No, I know you'd love to, but is there any feeling on staff that we're missing people out there?
Absolutely. The biggest area that we miss them in grades 7 through 12. That's an area that Dr. Drotti is working with his team on improving the reporting.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the multi-year projections. The LCFF funding model was used again, and this is the FICMAC funding model, and we continue to use that because there's no other tool out there to determine our multi-year projections for LCFF. We applied the COLAs appropriately and the gap funding. And you can see that we basically have, this is total restricted and unrestricted, and we have an increase of about $9 million, and most of that is in LCFF funding due to the 32% of the remaining gap funding. Then it kind of levels off because the gap gets smaller, and the percentage for 16-17 goes down to 11% as of today. It's projected to that. So at the very bottom, you can see that we do make our 3% reserve, which is the 4.1, the 4.1, and the 4.1 all the way across. But once you add the $4 million in, it's 6.1%, then goes up to 6.6 and 6.3. We did expect the revenue, to, except for LCFF, to remain fairly flat. We did increase the salaries by 1.5% due to step and column, and also increased the STRS and PERS contribution for the employer side, which goes up about 1.585 per year for STRS and is different for PERS all the way up. 1 year it's 0.829 and the next year is 2.4. We also decreased for QIA for one-time expenditures in 14-15, so, or that goes away in 15-16, sorry, we don't, it's not in the budget in 15-16. And then, as you can see, as I mentioned, we do meet our 3% reserve. We put this graph in to show you how quickly the PERS and STRS goes up over the next 5 or 6 years from 15-16 to 2021, where it tops out. It's quite a bit of money that's coming out for retirement. Can you go to the next one? So the 15-16 year, the blue is the PERS and STRS increase. In 15-16, the red is the increase in revenue, and that is really high because of the 32%. So I'm kind of taking the gap funding and comparing it to the increase in the PERS and STRS. And as you can see, in 15-16, it's like, wow, we're going to get so much more revenue, and it's going to cover the cost of the PERS. But if you look in 16-17, where the revenue is now only 11% of the remaining gap funding, that the 16-17 PERS and STRS increase will be greater, if everything remains the same, greater than the revenue. And this is the thing that keeps me up at night, that because it's a, as you can tell on the previous slide, it's a tremendous increase over the next until 2021, which will be a total of 39%. So then the rest are all the other funds.
I have a question.
Okay.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because this is only 2 years projection, and so clearly, I mean, there's more than 2 years to consider in order to get to that 39%. So how do you see that past the 2-year projection? I mean, is there reason to believe that this year we need to be particularly careful and conservative in our approach to balance out not just next year's, what looks like a small but still difference, but I'm guessing that that's going to increase.
It increases, as I said, 1.85 on the STRS, but on the PERS it goes up almost, you know, from there on like 2%. So, but it's really hard to determine because it all has to do with how much funding or what the percentage is on that gap funding, on that remaining gap funding. Because this time at first interim, we were looking at a 23% for next year, and it went up to 32%. So if we have another good year, that 11% may turn into a 20%. So, and I think that we will know more on May revise. This is just January. Taxes are coming in. We'll have a lot more information, and we'll be going to that conference on May 21st, and just in time for the adopted budget, and we'll have more knowledge at that point. But it is a concern. We have to consider it.
Thank you.
I think if the current situation doesn't change legislatively, there will be absolutely no way that not just our districts that don't have as much LCFF money will be faced with the same percentage increases for their staff. they'll be cutting services, laying off staff in order to pay their increased costs in STRS and PERS. I mean, not next year, maybe the year after that or the year after that, unless there is some change. Because the revenue, this is why this is such a good visual, because the revenue is not going to keep pace with what the district's expectations are in paying employee retirement.
Okay.
And it's, yeah, what keeps all of us hopeful.
And it will, the STRS goes up on the employee side too. Next year it will go up almost 2%, pretty close to it.
Okay, continue on.
So I'm open for questions, or you can approve the second interim for the Santa Barbara Unified School District.
Questions?
I believe the second interim.
Dr. Paz?
I move to approve.
I second it.
Thank you.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Meg. It's always interesting.
Always good.
Okay, we will now go back to G8, approval of 3-year agreement between Hanover Research and the Santa Barbara Unified School District. Dr. Cash?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'd ask Dr. Guillermo Juan and Mr. Torina. I don't know if you're going to be part of this, but I know Dr. Guillermo Juan is going to present this item.
Good evening, Mr. President.
And I want to thank you for, Dr. Guillermo Juan drove up from,
Ontario.
she was attending an Aries conference.
And my apologies for not being here by 15 seconds previously.
You're here now.
I'm here now.
And that's what matters. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cash. Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board. I'm here to speak to you tonight along with Assistant Superintendent Mitch Torina regarding Hanover Research and our contract with them. So Mr. Torina will actually go over the, actually this is the Neutron Project, so I guess I'll do the Neutron Projects first unless it's possible to have the previous year's projects. I think it would make a little bit more sense. Okay, no problem. But we'd like to talk to you about the projects that were completed in the first trial year of the contract, and then talk to you about the projects that we have discussed with Hanover for the upcoming year, and field questions. So if you want to.
Sure. So we are currently completing our climate survey. We had a window that was supposed to close as of last week, but we are trying to push a little bit more of our parent participation as required by LCAP and as requested by the board. So we actually are doing that this week, and we've been able to, I've requested to expand the window until the beginning of our spring break, and I should get word on that today. The organization's back in DC, and I think they had left by the time I had emailed them at 5 o'clock. And we currently, we're planning on doing our one-to-one iPad survey, and right now we have put that on hold due to some issues in regards to getting that out there and having that survey be exactly the information that we want from that survey. So that some of the questions that we are still looking at and looking at those, I don't know if Mr. Hendel can speak to this better, but there was 5 questions of how do we want that technology to play out for our schools, and so the formulating of those questions to get the exact information we want from those schools that had the one-to-one iPad survey rollout was still being created.
Okay, we have a question from Dr. Paz.
So my question is, when I look at the previous work that was completed and then the proposed work that's being proposed, when you look at that one that's right in front of us right now, you see a one-to-one program evaluation survey design, and then I think it goes on, talks about it some other place. Yeah. Then if you scroll down, there's the one-to-one survey build at the bottom of that document. But then now, for the proposed work, we're talking about one-to-one iPad. And my understanding is we're moving away from just looking at the iPad to really looking at one-to-one devices. So I'm kind of a little confused right now. Are we proposing to go back to what we were talking about before, which is one-to-one iPad? Or are we looking at one-to-one, and that's a different question?
We're going to evaluate the one-to-one iPad pilot program.
Okay. Because that one right there, it says one-to-one program evaluation. And the reason I'm asking is because if we are truly going to a one-to-one device, is that being proposed in the future? But what I'm hearing is that we're going to evaluate the one-to-one iPad program versus maybe looking at a one-to-one device evaluation.
We're going to do the iPad first evaluation.
Yes, so I think maybe there's just a difference in how it was, the words that were typed. So currently, we're evaluating the one-to-one iPad program.
Okay.
Next year, we're planning to do the same. If from the results this year, we see the need to evaluate further, then we would make that adjustment at that time in terms of evaluating anything other than just the iPad, but other one-to-one. So it's I would say it's definitely one-to-one iPad for next year, to be determined if we will be evaluating,
the one
say, Chromebooks or some other device. Yes.
Great.
Okay. Do we have any other questions about the projects completed and in process currently before I move to proposed projects for the next year?
Have we had any results whatsoever from any of this yet?
We have,
other than the format of the questions in the survey?
You mean results from any of the survey administrations?
Yeah, from anything that Hanover's done?
Yes, so we have not from their surveys, because the surveys are either being administered now or will be administered later this month. But there are other studies that they have done that we have results, particularly in the area of math compaction in secondary.
Thank you.
That was my question.
That was your question? Okay. So moving forward, before I discuss the actual projects, I wanted to contextualize the role of Hanover Research within research and evaluation in Santa Barbara Unified more broadly. And so Hanover has a number of services. The one that we are currently utilizing most heavily is their survey development and administration. They have a robust team that is able to utilize that capacity, and their capacity is much greater than our capacity. So if I were going to do that same work next year, I actually couldn't complete all the projects that we would slate to them, and then I would need to remove other types of projects off of my plate. So I really envision Hanover Research being mostly our survey administration, survey development, administration, analysis component of research and evaluation, and then my role moving forward will be focusing on program evaluation specifically, and then also looking at ways to get live data out to our various constituents, mostly principals, APs, assistant superintendents, other members of cabinet. I know the board is also interested in that, and then fielding a lot of daily requests from sites for support in learning how to extract data from our system. So I think those are three, and then the fourth component that I've been working in is developing a process to approve research and data sharing when it's related to program evaluation by external parties. So that's how I think Hanover Research fits in with the other work that I've been focusing on. So if we can move to the next slide, let's see, Neutron Projects. So we are planning to do the climate survey annually right now, particularly because we're doing a lot of work with just communities and our focus on cultural proficiency and equity. We felt that this is an important survey for us to do on an annual basis. It's possible in the future that we may move to every other year, every third year, which is sometimes standard. But we want to really make sure that we get some good, consistent data at the early phases of our work. it's actually not really early, but in the early phases of having a climate survey. This climate survey moving forward for 2016 is also going to include questions on restorative approaches, so we're going to combine that and do for the first time a district-wide survey for parents, I'm sorry, not for parents, but for students and staff, at least next year, on restorative approaches. Parents will eventually be rolled into that, and because it will also become part of the climate survey, it's likely that parents will be responding to that module. But there are just some different technicalities that we have to work out with Hanover Research on that. I'm also recommending that in addition to the one-to-one iPad survey, that we roll in our GATE surveys into Hanover Research. These have previously been done by parents on DAC, and I think the elementary DAC as well. And so being able to do that from the district perspective, I think will be a strong move for us and create consistency in how we are gathering data district-wide through the survey method. There are some other options that we have. One is about doing a literature review on best practices of developing a culture of inquiry and database decision-making in the current climate with LCAP and LCFF. We see from an accountability perspective the need to use data more regularly, but I also know that internally we are seeing an intrinsic interest in using data to guide our practice and to guide our decisions. And so that will require a cultural shift within our district, and we want to make sure that as we go about that we have a strategic plan, maybe may or may not be a strategic plan, but strategically go about it in a planned way. And so I think that utilizing their research team to gather that information for us will help me partner well with our assistant superintendents and our superintendent in moving the district forward in that matter. Something that's important to state, I think you may know from the contract, but the business model is such that you can only have one project in the queue at a time, and so that's why we're limited to approximately 6 projects per year, and it will depend on how long it takes for them to complete each one. So as we get more refined in the survey administrations, we will spend less time in survey development, and that may eventually, over the course of 3 years, allow us to up the number of projects that they complete. I think that is it, unless you have further questions at this time.
Dr. Paz?
I'm very supportive of going in this direction, and I think that, just having you has been a something that I've always wanted to see, at least as long as I've been on the board. And then having support to do the work that you are involved in, knowing that in my own job I need support. I can imagine you would have a similar need for that as well. And I think that looking at all the pieces that are there, the only thing I would comment or say, there's a little bug in front of me, is I know we've asked, and I know I particularly have asked, and I know you're all working on trying to come back to the board, and even with the district administrators, that calendar of how these things are going to roll back to us. And I know even in your comments of looking at the all of the research that's being done on our campuses, like tonight we had one from UCSB.
Correct.
And having that information come back to us and fold back to us. Even as a board, I think sometimes we approve things and we may not even necessarily come back. When we had that whole discussion about Harding, a lot of it was because we didn't even know what the benefits were. And having a research institution be in one of our campuses and not necessarily knowing exactly what the outcome has been of their presence, and that's research, is a big thing. So I think my only comment would be to come back in some of these pieces and find a way to fold them back into that calendar I know you're working on, because I think those are critical pieces, and it really does point to that third or 6th project you have there, of developing a culture of inquiry and database decision-making, because it's a piece I think that as a board member, I've asked for a lot, and I think I'm always pushing it, because we can't know where we're going unless we know where we're at.
Right.
And I think as a school district, we need to be at that place in time, so I'm completely supportive of this. I want us to continue to look at that piece in particular. I think it's a priority for us as a district, and as a board, we need to have that piece of information. I think the public demands it, people would like to see it, and parents would benefit from it, from knowing how their kids are doing compared to other kids across our county. So, too much to say, not enough time.
Thank you.
Ms. Limon?
I have a question for Dr. Cash. Can you tell us anything about what you envision as we go forward in this area? Because I know when this came to us last year, it was with not, I mean, it wasn't like set in stone that it wasn't going to come back in the future, but I think that, at least for me, I thought, well, 1 year of Hanover, let's see where we're at. And without having really seen the results of the survey, without having really used the data to influence policy, I'm just trying to think about where does this go in a year or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. And I don't know if this is essentially the pilot years to figure out and make those maybe more permanent or long-term decisions. But I'm just trying to figure out how to think about this, because is it going to, well, this is a 3-year contract, right? This is the 3-year. How do we think about that?
So, originally it was anticipated that it would be an either-or. What we have discovered is that while we are a data-rich organization, we are a data-poor analytic organization, very poor. And it's not because people don't care, it's because people are busy doing the work. Having someone like Dr. Guillermo Juan, whose job it is to stop all of that and evaluate the effectiveness of the work we're doing, is something that we've really needed for a long, long time. And in order for her to engage in that kind of work, and in order for us to still have a way to collect some of the data, which we think we're going to need, particularly for LCAP purposes, we had some pretty frank conversations in cabinet, I think. All of us would admit that about, well, because I said, geez, Hanover contract, I kind of told the board, it was going to be either you, Chelsea, or Hanover. And you're telling me that you think we need to keep Hanover, and obviously we want to definitely keep Dr. Guillermo Juan. And the rationale that emerged clearly was that it was more of complementary. They're going to perform some sort of rudimentary tasks that don't really require the brain power that Dr. Guillermo Juan has in helping us build a culture of inquiry. I mean, just the things that she has done alone that she's been able to do because Hanover's been focused on our kind of LCAP work has been fantastic. How research proposals are brought into the district, how they're reviewed, but what a principal's role is, what cabinet's role is, what the superintendent's role is, how the board gets involved, how we're going to create, I mean, her and I now meet once a week, and we go through a project list of all of the projects that are being requested of her and have a conversation about priorities, about where do we get the biggest bang for our buck, all of those things. I don't think she would have the opportunity to engage in if we were having her do the work that we need to in relationship to getting data for, and particularly for the LCAP right now, which is really what Hanover's going to be doing for us.
Well, and I guess it's interesting because
can I just finish? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And one of the things is that the full intention was that iPad survey was going to be done 2 months ago, essentially. And it didn't get done. And so it got stuck behind our climate survey. And having conversations with our site administrators, it was very clear that what we need to be very careful of is survey fatigue for everyone, so that we get accurate data. That the data we get is going to help us make recommendations to the board for decisions that you have to make. So.
Well, there's definitely, I know that when we were having this conversation a year plus ago, something that I heard Dr. Guillermo Juan talk about was that her role is also training people on how to use the systems to get data, and I don't know that that was prominent in our discussion at the time. So I hear that there's been other elements that are coming forward as a function of we didn't have the position, now we knew, and now we know what we need. So I have a question about these surveys for the 13-14 year. Is the reason we don't have results a district reason, or is it a Hanover reason?
Oh, it's not, has nothing to do with Hanover.
Okay, so
it's all on us.
And what do we do about, the survey piece? And you talked about survey fatigue, knowing that these are just the district surveys, but if, it could be that
Dr. Guillermo
principals are
Juan is
also
creating a protocol and a data capture document that's going to allow us to calendar out and understand school site surveys, something we've never done before.
Right, because I know that they happen, and I know
Yep.
that they also happen in other areas, right? It's not just the district as a whole, but even within, there's secondary, there's elementary, there's special
absolutely.
ed.
Yeah.
So
We learned about surveys we didn't know existed.
Right, and so, well, and I think that that's important to consider,
Yes.
especially right now with everything that is on everyone's plate. And, as someone who works at UCSB who's really started to get engaged, I try to do every survey that I'm asked to do because I understand that that data is priceless, but I can't. Between the ones you get emails and the ones, it's hard. And so I'm just thinking about our teachers and even our parents, how many are we going to ask them? So I'm glad that that's being considered, and I just want to, echo that it is a concern that, we don't want the data at a cost of that interrupting other good work that's happening.
No, and our goal is to create a way in which we can have a protocol for granting permission to do a survey and have an understanding of the data that we're going to get from the surveys. And one of the things that came out that Dr. Guillermo Juan alluded to or stated was the realization that, the RA, because we're going to do an RA survey, no, that needs to be folded into the climate survey. That's probably just a number of questions that we can fold in as opposed to a separate administration. So over time, we're going to learn that, not to create one monster survey of 6 hours in administration, but look toward how can we be efficient and still get the information that we need. But one of the things that I stated and you've alluded to, or stated as well, is that what's come out of this is our understanding of all the surveys that individual schools are doing. School sites, without telling anyone, were conducting their own surveys of students, of parents, of staff, or in all three, on various issues that they had interest in. All of which are appropriate. We're not trying to say no to all of those, but we're creating a process by which we can have what we think is a good conversation before we just do it.
Dr. Paz.
I think the original point, maybe that was what you were trying to make, was that when we look at this in the long term, in the 3 years, it gives you some breathing room, so to speak, but beyond the 3 years, I think even during that period of time of looking at it, I know you all are having discussions at cabinet level, but even as a board, bringing this back to the board and saying, where do we stand? Are you still, are you swimming or are you drowning? And I think that's really an important point that my fellow board member, Ms. Simon, is bringing up in terms of looking at that and bringing it back, because I think that will be a critical piece to look at and continue to monitor and look at that. Because if this, is a piece that we as a board, as a district, are supportive of looking at data and being data-driven as an organization, I don't believe that you are the only person that's going to achieve that. It has to be across the district, and we also have to kind of look at it in terms of right size. One person is not going to do that, and you're not capable of doing that. No person is capable of doing that. As much as you might have a lot of talents, yes, you can't have all those talents, and I know that myself. And so I think that's a piece that I think we need to, I would ask Dr. Cash to bring it back and continue to have it as a discussion point in however form he chooses to do that. But I think it's an important piece. And even a year from now, looking at this contract and coming back and looking at it, revisiting it and saying, is it working? Is it not? What are the pieces that we just are not doing that we should be doing? So.
count on it.
Yes, absolutely.
Ms. Heidelson?
Quick question. So how do they suggest addressing survey fatigue? Because I think that's a very real concern. As a parent with 2 children currently in the district, I'll get repetitive requests and sort of reaches a point, I know it's important, as you say, but I'm like, my time's worth something. So what's suggested as far as that goes?
Well, I think the first thing we have to do is wrap our arms around it, which this is the first time that that I can ever recall we're having actual conversations about who's doing what to whom. And then once we know and have a good idea that this is what schools have done, intend to do, want to do, then we can have a good conversation about how to get that information, whether it's through a survey or not. And our kind of thumbnail analysis indicates that we don't need to do as many surveys as we're doing. We can obtain information that schools may want in a variety of ways that won't require somebody filling out a survey.
And even the piece that I was going to suggest is that even in surveys, you can do a sampling, you know.
Yep.
You don't have to do every student in a particular program, so I think that is something to consider as well.
All of those things are actual conversations that we're now having.
Where does the Healthy Kids Survey fit into this picture?
Well, that's certainly one of the surveys that will be part of our survey administration.
It's just not conducted by Hanover Research.
Right.
Right, but so
So
I
that's
think...
part of parent fatigue.
Correct.
Is that
Sure.
Right.
Oh, absolutely.
One more survey.
Yep.
Correct. So I think what Dr. Cash was saying is that I'm in the process of cataloging, if you will, the surveys that we do district-wide, and then working with the principals to start to gather information of the surveys that they do at their sites. And this was actually a conversation in both the secondary and elementary principals meetings where they were very eager to have this information pooled together and make decisions together about what they will continue to do or what can maybe be consolidated.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Do I have a motion?
I make the motion to approve the 3-year agreement between Hanover Research and the Santa Barbara Unified School District.
I saw a weak second down there. Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for making the extra effort to get back tonight.
And speaking of surveys, I think we have the GATE Annual Summary of Spring 2014 Survey Results.
Dr. Drawdy.
A lot has happened since the last time we brought this item to you in terms of professional learning to support our honors and AP teachers. So we're anxious to show you what has happened and also go over the last survey as well. So I'm going to introduce Mrs. Sandy Robertson.
Degree.
That sounded better.
Good evening, Dr. Drawdy. Dr. Cash, Mr. President, members of the board, I'm delighted to be here with you to present last spring's survey, and I want to thank Chelsea for helping me get it together. This is only an overview. I did email probably last fall, I'm thinking October, each of you, you have the whole survey, including the open-ended questions that I won't be reporting on today, but this is just the data. We've done an annual survey since the 1980s, 34 years about. This district started receiving money as a categorical for the Gifted and Talented program in about 1979. As a component of that program, we were required to do an annual survey. In those days, we didn't have the facility with technology, so we couldn't do all 7 schools every year. And hearing the previous conversation, I'm thinking maybe we need to go back to sampling schools periodically as we did then, which was necessary because we would hand tally the questions. And these questions at that time were developed by the parents and the teachers who worked in the program. So we think we've gotten a little bit more sophisticated in the way that we ask questions, certainly with Dr. Guillermo Juan's help. But we digitized in the mid-2000s. There was a parent who was on my board who did market research, and she helped us refine some questions and go digital. And about in 2006, that became possible for us to easily send out a survey. We started with one of them, SurveyMonkey, or whatever the other one was, and that made it easier for us to tally the data too. However, we were able to reach wider participants, but we continued to see the same results over time, all the years that I've been involved. Recently, class size and the range of student ability within the class is a new concern for all three constituent groups. We survey students, parents, and teachers. However, program satisfaction trends remain the same over time. The quantity and quality of homework, whether they're getting a lot of homework but it's valuable, they're getting a lot of homework but the kids don't feel it's valuable, and the teachers wonder why there's so much homework, and that increases as they go through, that concern increases as they go through secondary school. And always a continuing concern about the qualification and training of teachers. And that's where, as you know, from our fundraising dollars, partnering with the district, we've provided a lot of professional development for teachers out of our funding. This is a survey participant response trends going back to 2007-08 when we first went digital. You can see it varies widely. We try to administer the survey in late May after all of the testing is over. And the student participation really is dependent upon whether teachers can get students to a computer at school if they have time to do it, or we also appeal to the families to have your student do one at home. Of course, there's the digital divide, as we know, and so it's better to try to reach kids at school. So this year, we were able to do a great deal more, and I think that might have to do with the availability of technology in the schools for the kids to use. The educator survey there at the bottom, you see it goes up and down, and again, we ask teachers to do a lot of surveys at the end of the year. If the principals have our particular survey on a checklist for the teachers to do before they leave in June, then we get more response. So it's a matter of communication. I think if we went back to a sampling of a couple of schools, a junior high and a high school, every 2 or 3 years, then we might have higher response, because the idea of survey fatigue resonated with me as I talked to the teachers about getting this done at the end of the year. Our trends in terms of students' overall rating the honors program, you can see that the average and strong have been pretty consistent over the years. Even during the years that we combine the GATE and honors classes, there doesn't seem to be much. We get much more detailed information in the open-ended comments about what they like about the classes, what they think is strong, but this is just a snapshot, as I say. And the same with the parents. 2010-11 was the first year. Was it 9-10 or 10-11 that we combined the classes, and there might have been a teeny dip there, but it remains pretty strong. Here's a rating of some of the categories. Teacher quality, we think, is one of our top concerns, of course. Special projects, methods of instruction, advanced curriculum, special person. We ask, is there one person at your school site who's made a difference? And they have a chance to name that particular person. Or it might be a counselor, it might be a particular teacher, or someone else in administration. Homework quality, as you can see, varies pretty widely. Teacher quality, we highlighted. I'm particularly impressed with La Cumbra, as you might be as well. That might have something to do with the core knowledge program, where they have a block schedule. They get to know the kids really well. It's a smaller school. That might have something to do with it. There we go. This might look confusing at first. There's a lot of data here that we could go into. It's trends over time. These are all on the left, differentiation strategies that many of our teachers have been trained in. Some have not. Flexible grouping, differentiated products. That means student choice in what they produce as part of a lesson or a unit. Content, independent study, icons. Those of you who are familiar with Dr. Sandra Kaplan know what the icons are, depth and complexity. Differentiated processes, learning styles, tiered assignments, curriculum compacting, and universal concepts. So over time, increase over the previous year. Now, we were particularly interested in this data because we've undertaken a major program to train teachers in differentiation. We wanted to see if it was having any impact. We might get more significant data this year because the teachers have had time to put it in place. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. I'll talk more about that right now. Beginning in January in 2014, we selected a cohort of 1 teacher per core subject area, although there were some elective teachers who did come, and right now we even have some PE teachers and special ed. But we started with core area teachers from 7th, 9th grades, and a similar cohort started this last January, 8th and 10th grades, and we assumed that the 9th grade and 10th grade teachers were also probably teaching AP or IB classes, and so we were reaching all of our students. We had 6 all-day sessions. The first session was on mindset theory. I'm sure many of you are familiar with mindset theory that talks about the growth mindset as opposed to the fixed mindset. Fixed mindset is a huge problem for many of our GATE-identified students because they believe that their intelligence is fixed and they shouldn't have to try very hard, and if they do have to try, there's something wrong with the teacher, or really they were mislabeled. And they're kind of stuck in an inertia. It's a huge problem for underachieving GATE students. Once we begin to teach them, or at least the research shows you begin to teach those students about mindset theory and that they can have a growth mindset, their behaviors begin to change. So I thought it was very important, especially with the wide range of student abilities in some of our classes, for the teachers to be familiar with mindset theory and learn some techniques and strategies for teaching their kids about a growth mindset. The teachers have loved those sessions and have asked us to purchase materials for them to use in the classrooms. That was a half day in the morning. Then that afternoon, I did a demonstration of a differentiated lesson, which I thought was a lot of fun because I got to teach again. And I hope that that would kind of frame the work of here's all the different parts of a differentiated lesson that you might do with different materials, varying resources. We did a gallery walk, we did group work, we did individual work. Some of the resources included a podcast or a video or the traditional reading materials. Tried to address different learning styles to show them that it was possible to do a differentiated lesson on a fairly sophisticated topic, which was how the brain learns, and hopefully it would use it as a model for their thinking when they came back for the 5 all-day sessions with Dr. Sandra Kaplan and her research assistant, Dr. Jessica Manzone. So we're in the middle of this second round. The next step is that Dr. Dradi and I are in deep conversation investigating the most efficient model to disseminate the teaching strategies for this cohort of, now it's going to be about 70 teachers that we've trained. How do we ensure that not only do they have the support they need, planning time and resources to implement those strategies in their classrooms, and how can they mentor or coach or be of use to their colleagues? There are many other initiatives, as you know, that are going on, the Pathways and series, and we're trying to be very strategic about how we move forward with our next steps. One idea is that we will draw leadership from volunteers of this cohort group to take the next steps with us, whatever that might be. And frankly, several teachers from both junior highs and high schools have said they would be interested in working with us. So I'm working with Dr. Dradi, as I said, on figuring out where we will go next. A coaching model might be one of the things that we would do, but we definitely want to continue with the momentum on training our teachers in differentiated strategies, because we know from research that it serves all of our students, not just those who are identified as gifted. I'd be happy to take any questions. I think that's, there we are.
Ms. Parker?
Could you go into a little bit more on slide 8 of 9, the percent of respondents indicating differentiation strategies used and increase, decrease from the previous year?
Okay.
Was there I was trying to figure out the color, because yellow is up, yellow is down.
My expert will help us with that.
So the orange is, it was just trying to show the junior highs versus the high school, so it didn't necessarily get muddled together. So the purple is really for the high schools, and the lighter color is the students, the darker is the educators. So it's just, there's so much there. It's not the direction, it's just the top responses for students and educators in junior high, and then students and educators in high school. So you can kind of quickly see if there is a difference. So for junior high schools, what are the top differentiation strategies that the students identified as being used compared to what the educators are saying that they use?
All right, so we can see that for junior high, flexible grouping was the one thing that there was a lot of change on. over the course of 1 year, according to the students reporting out.
Right, so the students are saying, about 3/4 of the students are saying, yes, flexible grouping was used, and then the arrow is saying that is a trend up from what they said last year.
And for high school students, okay, so 73% is just the total number. It's not like the amount up itself.
Correct.
So for high school students, the biggest jump up in terms of students reporting that it was happening was for the icons.
Yeah, 46%.
Correct? Which is all the way 46%. Everything else was going down.
Yes. Oh, actually, independent study right above it. 59%.
Oh, I see. There it is.
Sorry, it's
Okay.
really light
Yeah,
on the
it's very
screen.
pale. Okay. Thank you.
Is that- okay.
And I'm trying to remember, in the large version of the study, did that ask for the students that were taking the survey to report ethnicity, socioeconomics? It
Yes.
did, didn't it?
Yes, and gate, whether they were gate identified or not.
Okay, and in terms of who, I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, what percentage, how did that play out in terms of representing the students that we have in the district, the students that we have in the program?
We have to look.
I will have to look at it, but I will be happy to get back to you.
Okay, great, thank you.
Dr. Boss?
Yeah, I had a similar question when I was looking at the data. It would have been very interesting and probably a little more, for me, a little more informative to break it down a little more in the demographic piece, just to understand if there's different experiences from students from various different backgrounds.
We'll get that data for you. Any other questions? Yes.
Anything else? Thank you very much.
I want to thank all of you for your support and for Ms. Parker for attending our meetings, and I'd just also like to give a special thank you to my former student, Monique Limon. I'm so happy that you were able to pick out typo errors because she was my English student. And Dr. Guillermo Juan was never late when she was in my 7th grade English class.
You will always be Miss Robertson to me in the greatest way.
I'm so proud of the number of students who've come back to serve with us, and even though it seems like I must have been teaching for 100 years since these accomplished adults are here. Remember, I was a GATE student, and I started teaching when I was 4. So.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sandy.
Okay. H2, first reading and discussion of BP 6163.1, Library Media Center. Dr. Cash.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Well, before you, you have the CSBA recommended changes, along with changes that our own secondary librarians recommended. They recommended very few. And what you will note that is one of the key components in the changes is the library plan and its relationship to existing district plans, which I think is good, not a separate standalone plan. And I think a lot of that should ring and sound familiar with the idea that we're trying to get everything inside of one plan as opposed to having all these separate programs and plans, unrelated. One of the things that's not related to this but came out of the conversation with our librarians in relationship to this board policy was my request to ask them to let me know so I could inform the board what kinds of things they felt were most important moving forward in supporting libraries, both in our secondary schools and in our elementary schools. And they came forward with some very specific ideas, and those you will see, because I believe we're carrying forward 100% of those recommendations in our LCAP, which will include some very specific funding models for junior high and high school. I've only been here for 4 years, but Mr. Herron has asked the same question each year. Yeah. And so you won't, if you approve the LCAP, you won't be able to ask that question anymore, good. Mr. Herron, I'm sorry. And then also contained within that will be, they came forward with a really very specific proposal in relationship to how to support elementary school students with credentialed elementary librarians moving forward as well. So since that's part of the LCAP, I mean, you're going to see it soon. and it's a pretty straightforward analysis, so I didn't include it in this presentation in relationship to the board policy. I expected a more, and I don't know why, but a more detailed kind of back and forth with them on the proposed policy, but they were really fine with it. So it's here for any questions or...
Ms. Parker?
I think it looks great. I think the CSBA did a great job on the update, and it looks pretty similar. I can't even pick out the pieces that they that our own district librarians have tweaked, but I think it's a good update. Really brings it into the 21st century.
Can I come back on the consent calendar?
Yep, for me.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
We will now go back to E15, award of bid number 2014-15-003, network electronic equipment. Dr. Paz?
So my question was just a very simple one, is that I didn't see the breakdown in terms of the line items as it was mentioned on the cover sheet, so I wasn't sure what exactly we were voting for.
Yeah, I'm sorry that wasn't provided. I'll ask Anne Marie, who submitted that item, to include that. We're buying replacement controllers for aging controllers, and also access points to replace older access points, as well as I talked a little bit about once before about how when we initially rolled out wireless, we did this coverage model, and we're going to go back now and fill in the gaps in that, so we're going to put an AP in every classroom.
And where's the funding coming from for the majority part of it?
The money is coming from this one-time funding from E-rate. It's a $2.2 million that we have available to us, but we have to pay 20% of that. And so we're going to set aside money that we're getting back in Microsoft voucher money to offset that cost, that 20% that we'll be required to pay.
And we hope that this first round is buying the equipment, and then next year we'll have hopefully another sum of money to do the installation.
Correct. The money's available to us over 5 years, except our E-rate consultant suggested that we spend it as quickly as we can, because she can't guarantee that it's going to be there at the end of 5 years. So the plan was, at this first year we were going to buy the equipment, and then next year we'll bring a proposal back to the board for some installation costs, and also looking at replacing aging fiber on our campus.
Okay. Do you have a motion?
I make the motion to approve the award of bid number 2014-15-003, network electronic equipment.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Okay, do you want to go back to the second interim and go through that again, line by line?
I think Ms. Chatte's ready for that.
I'm sorry.
We want to go back over the second interim, line by line.
Sure, let's go. I don't have to catch a plane until tomorrow morning.
Okay, coming events. Any coming events? I would like to thank those of you who have gone into the Google Calendar and put in events. Anything you find, just put in there. If you want to send it to me, I'll put them in, but just, I find it very useful so far. So thank you, Dr. Paz, for putting that together. Future agenda items. At some point, when we have a free moment, I would suggest having an AOK presentation. They do an awful lot for our students after school, and it's a multitude of programs. I think you sent us a list of...
It's incredible.
...of what they're doing. So from a public standpoint, at some point, I mean, we got a lot of stuff to do, but just add that to the list.
Will do.
Okay, our next meeting is March 24th, and then April 14th, and then we have a joint city council meeting on April 17th.
I did meet with the Goleta city manager, and we're putting together a tentative agenda for our joint meeting. So if board members have items that they'd like to be addressed, please forward those to me as well.
Okay, 8:35, we'll close this meeting.
I found it on.
Thank you.